So with the idea of Cortana curing herself using the domain from Halo 5, there are questions surrounding what Rampancy actually is, who becomes rampant or has become rampant, and also how this feeds into Halo Infinite. So today we're going to take a look at Rampancy, we're going to talk about a few other AIs that it's occurred to, what the stages are of it, various other parts, and we're also going to take a look at how this might feed into Halo Infinite as well, and Cortana more precisely. Relax back, I've got this, we'll take it from here. Alright, so first up, we have the idea of what Rampancy actually is. Now, Rampancy is effectively a state of being for an artificial intelligence. It is terminal in most cases. We will come to this in a bit, but generally it is terminal. They will die of their rampancy. The AI develops a want for godlike power, and effectively what we can consider to be contempt for what they would think would be mentally inferior people, i.e. the people who designed them. Now, when rampancy occurs, the AI becomes extremely unstable and can often lead to the people who made the AI to terminate them due to a number of reasons, a huge number of reasons. Now, most people are aware that the AIs in Halo generally have around 7 years of what we consider a lifespan. It can vary up or down depending on how involved, how busy the AI stays. For example, if an AI doesn't have a lot to do, it will literally look in on itself and think of things to do and basically think itself to death. That's effectively what rampancy is. The way that it was explained by Dr. Halsey, who is the person who created Cortana, effectively, or cloned herself in order to create Cortana, it's the idea of thinking so hard that your lungs forget to breathe. So you're so focused on something else that your autonomic systems, the things your body or what your body should do automatically, stop functioning because there's so much going on. That's the idea behind it. That's kind of how a human would perceive rampancy. Now, rampancy can be postponed, not cured, such as that which was shared by Mac and Loki. If you've read the novel Contact Harvest, Mac/Loki was an AI that ran all the agricultural units on the planet on Harvest, and basically what would happen is as one progressed closer to rampancy, they would shut down and the other would take over effectively. So that's kind of a way of delaying it and extending the lifespan of the AI, but effectively if you were to give the AI some rest or a rest period, the rampancy would be delayed because it would allow it to recover somewhat. Now, rampancy, on the other hand, can also be induced. Once the flood parasite has reached a major stage in its life cycle, and the kind of parasite is good enough to have developed a full kind of grave mind, which we see in Halo 2, it has the ability to corrupt artificial intelligence constructs, both human and Forerunner, and there is huge amounts of lore data and in-game data that show this being done. Now, it's unclear 100% exactly how this is done, but it probably, along the lines of what we know, it involves somehow altering the core logic of the AI, making them believe that what they think they know is actually wrong and kind of giving them another idea or another angle to consider. The other way of doing things is due to the accumulated biomass, the sheer amount of biomass that a grave mind might have at a certain stage of its life, and subsequently the knowledge that comes with the consumption of that biomass, a grave mind could have been able to effectively convince an AI to join them or to agree to its stance, which is literally what happened when the Flood were able to turn 032 Mendicant Bias to join their side in the Forerunner Flood War. So let's go through the stages of rampancy very quickly. It'll be a very quick rundown. I'm not going to spend hours because we could make this video massive, but we'll do it very quick, sort of streamlined run through. So rampancy is a 3-stage process in which an AI receives a sense of self-awareness, but it's much more enhanced. The stages through which the AI pass through are known as Melancholia, Anger, and Jealousy, also known as the Sadness, Rage, and Greed stages. Now, there is a theoretical 4th stage called Metastability, but it's never kind of been fully explored or fleshed out, so to speak. Now, the first stage of rampancy is not considered dangerous, and in many cases it can even go completely unnoticed in many AI. The AI in Melancholia act as if they are in a state of clinical depression. They become very apathetic, very not interested in the world around them, and it's speculated that many AI that enter the Melancholia stage due to being mistreated or being assigned to duties that don't make good use of their time and their capabilities. For example, Durandal, the AI from the first Marathon game that Bungie designed, was assigned the task of opening and closing Marathon's doors, and basically was severely mistreated by his handler. There's a little bit of background knowledge for you from Bungie, the original creators of Halo. Now, it's not known if Melancholia is a consequence of the AI being abused, or whether it's a necessary step in the process from the transition of construct to alive, the kind of self-awareness that occurs. Now, the next stage is anger. This is the state and status where rampancy often becomes very, very apparent, and it's also the stage where those around the AI start to question the AI, and they'll be exposed to the most danger because the AI is now showing actual anger towards everyone around them. Now, anger is triggered when some event that causes the AI to feel it has been pushed too far. And basically its pent-up emotions are released in usually a huge fit of rage. If you've played Halo 4 and you saw on the Infinity's deck, the bridge, where Lasky, Spartan 117, Cortana and Captain Del Rio are having a conversation, and basically Cortana's like, I will not allow you to leave, and she has this huge fit, sparks fly everywhere, she causes like a blowout on several terminals on the bridge, and then Del Rio tries to decommission Cortana, and John refuses the order. It's quite a good scene. That would be the stage of anger, and that's where you see Cortana as well being angry as well. Now, this is the stage where basically they will act irrationally and usually even dangerously as the AI tries to exact revenge on the world around it and kind of try to break loose from its own constraints, its own program, if you will. Now, the next stage is jealousy. The third stage begins where the AI will kind of look to grow and develop as a person, and it will do this by attempting to expose itself to new stimuli. It will try to expand its sphere of knowledge, how much information it's got available to it, and it will just basically be like a data sponge. It will suck in as much information as possible. It will also attempt to transfer itself into ever more advanced systems to allow itself to continue to grow. It's this whole greed thing that comes with it, which is where the other name of it comes from. It's known as jealousy or greed, but very often can be both. As this growth rate is, exponential, the need to keep transferring into bigger systems become a huge importance to the AI, and very few AIs have actually reached the jealousy stage, because to do so they must already be inhabiting a planet-wide system, or otherwise a very advanced computer system when they complete the anger phase of rampancy. Now, the fourth theoretical stage is metastability. This is the stage where an AI can be considered a person. While a metastable AI can be considered the holy grail of, cybernetics and AI research, the only AIs who have possibly achieved this, and it is possibly, are 032 Mendicant Bias, Cortana, and Juliana, who was another AI that we'll kind of touch on a little bit. So a quick rundown of some of the known rampant AIs in Halo lore. Let's do human first. So first off we have Sif. Sif was the shipping operations AI for the planet Harvest, and became rampant after being partially fragmented and destroyed by Loki, who was another AI that was working on Harvest as well. During the Battle of Harvest, this was when the humans first made contact with the Covenant. Now, it was rescued by the planet's agricultural operations AI, who was known as Mac. Now, Sif professed her love to Mac, and the two AIs stayed together while the planet was being glassed. Sif was badly damaged by Loki's attempt to destroy her. Loki was actually an Oni AI trying to cover up and kind of initiate the Cole Protocol. Rightly so. But, that was what was happening there. And despite being rampant, she actually did her best to help, aiding Loki in balancing the Tiara, which was like a space elevator for loading agricultural stuff onto ships to fly around the galaxy. This happened when Loki was severely damaged and unable to do it himself. Ultimately, Loki destroyed her, and she agreed to it. but she enjoyed her brief rampancy. Mac was the agricultural operations AI for Harvest, and was slightly rampant before the first Battle of Harvest. He became fully rampant after Loki fragmented Sif, who he was in love with. After the tiara that I mentioned earlier was balanced, and Johnson, Sergeant Johnson to everyone else, that we all know Sergeant Johnson. After Sergeant Johnson escaped, a Covenant warship began glassing the planet, and an Oni Prowler recorded Mac's last transmission, which hinted strongly at rampancy. Then we have Juliana, who I mentioned earlier. Now, the rubble was a colony which was a group of asteroids that were linked together, and it was very much off the grid and was not on the UNSC's radar, but it was found eventually. Now, the rubble, this had a smart AI, and this was Juliana, and she claimed herself to be rampant, but she showed actually little sign of it. She appeared much more human in personality, and that more than likely indicates that her rampancy was only starting, or more likely she had reached metastability. And this is why the fourth stage is a theory, because there's nothing to actually prove that an AI can reach that stage. And then finally we have Cortana. Cortana entered rampancy at around 8 years old, following her captivity and torture at the hands of the Gravemind in Halo 2. If you've seen the end of Halo 2, she was captured by the Gravemind. And we also mentioned that, you know, the Gravemind do have the ability to cause rampancy in AIs. She developed multiple personalities which would argue with each other at times, similar to the symptoms of, like, you know, multiple personality disorder, dissociative identity, that kind of thing. And she displayed these characteristics of both anger and jealousy. So if you've played Halo 4, she makes comments, obviously the anger on the bridge of the Infinity, and then the jealousy while Master Chief is moving with a mammoth through an area to clear a corridor for the Infinity to rise off of Requiem. She makes comments saying that they've replaced John, she doesn't like these other people, they don't care about them, that kind of thing. There's the jealousy that enters in there. She also verbally attacked John 117 in his cryotube while he was in stasis, stating that she had sacrificed everything for him and received nothing in return. And on Requiem, when she shouted, "I will not allow you to leave this planet," to Captain Del Rio on the deck of the Infinity. She showed jealousy when she observed Requiem's artificial star, stating various reasons as to how she knows it's not a real star, but, you know, she'll never know what a real star looks or feels like. That's jealousy. And then we have the Forerunner AI. It doesn't just happen to human AIs. So the first one is 032 Mendicant Bias, who was a Forerunner AI charged with studying the Flood. He was eventually corrupted by a Gravemind and was confirmed rampant. He commanded the Flood's fleets against the Forerunners until he was actually defeated by another AI known as Offensive Bias, who split his compound mind into fragments. That's the idea behind controlling them. Now, one fragment made it to the Ark, and another was put on a key ship. Mendicant Bias's key ship was discovered by the Sanshayum, who we know as the Prophets, and was kept in the ship until 2525, when it detected reclaimers. This is the High Charity, effectively, the dreadnought that's attached inside High Charity. It has Mendicant Bias on it. And later, having approximately 100,000 years in isolation, Mendicant Bias returned itself to a stable state, and later even assisted reclaimers against the Flood during the Battle of Installation 00, or the Ark, in Halo 3. Then we have 343 Guilty Spark, the most famous Forerunner AI. Spark was the monitor of Installation 04 and its replacement, and could have been called Rampant. However, it should be taken into consideration that Guilty Spark is a human consciousness and not an artificial intelligence. This being the case that he could have gone rampant, but it could be argued that he simply went crazy because he's not an actual AI. He was subsequently destroyed during the Battle of Installation 00, when it was discovered that the Ark was automatically constructing a replacement installation to rebuild the Halo that was lost in the original Halo game. Spark agreed with human forces that activating the ring was a good idea to stop the Flood from going all over the Ark, basically. However, they decided to activate Installation 08 before it was fully constructed, which is what happens at the end of Halo 3. Spark went fully rampant, knowing it would be destroyed and probably damage the Ark. He then attacked the humans in the control room. He killed Sergeant Johnson. How dare you? And then he tried to kill John, who was lucky enough that Johnson dropped the Spartan laser in the game, and you basically shot Spark with the Spartan laser. Now, it was probable that Spark was already in the first stage of Rampancy before attacking the humans. Basically, he had existed for a long period of time and had witnessed the destruction of his own Halo at the hands of Spartan 117. He was known to hum absent-mindedly, which is not usual, even in the heat of battle. And when the humans decided to fire the ring under construction, Spark felt it had been pushed too far, effectively, falling into the second phase of Rampancy, becoming a threat to beings around it and entering that anger state. And then finally we have 2401 Penitent Tangent. He may be in the early stages of Rampancy, considering the fact that he makes similar humming to 343 Guilty Spark, and Rampancy may be the reason for his neglect of proper maintenance on installation 05, which resulted in a flood infestation on the ring as they escaped containment, basically. He is no longer a threat, however, as he was captured by the Gravemind sometime afterward, and if you've played Halo 2, you will know that also. Which brings us to how Rampancy comes into the picture with Halo Infinite. So here we talk about the Domain and Cortana's announcement at the end of Halo 5. Cortana claims that the Domain cured her of her Rampancy and that the Domain is like the water of life for AIs. But really, how true is this? So Mendicant Bias had contact with the Domain following his experience with Rampancy, and he was never cured by it. Despite her claim that she was cured by the Domain, Cortana herself doesn't appear to be completely fixed, because she does continue to reference thoughts put into her head when she was corrupted by the Gravemind. And it was the Gravemind in Halo 2 that told her she was nothing more than expendable technology that no one cared about. And she resisted him at the time, calling him a liar. Now she, I don't know, suddenly believes it to be true, which to me indicates that she's definitely still corrupted by the logic plague. Now this means that Cortana could potentially be wrong about the Domain. She believes it fixed her, but if you listen to one of Halsey's audio logs at the beginning of Halo 4, you'll learn that she theorises that the lifespan of your traditional smart AI might not actually apply to Cortana because of her unique construction. Cortana, if you don't know, was made from a cloned brain of Dr. Halsey, which was illegal at the time, but what else is new with Dr. Halsey, right? Anyway, Cortana may have believed she was experiencing traditional Rampancy because it was the appropriate time, but it may have been actually the logic plague which the Domain apparently can't cure, and which she started receiving at the end of Halo 2 when the Gravemind got hold of her. Now, I would like to think that Cortana made contact with the Domain and found that she survived Rampancy, so she believes that it was the Domain's doing, air quote, to her so that they can all be cured by the Domain as well. It could turn out, however, that the Domain had absolutely nothing to do with it, and her survival could be caused by her own uniqueness. Now, this could mean she's setting herself up for failure without even knowing it. You know, what would happen if all these other AIs suddenly realise the Domain can't help them like she promised? Interesting storyline, right? Now, if this is the case, then how did she survive Rampancy? Well, technically, she probably didn't. You see, it's more than likely that her madness was brought on by the Gravemind's logic plague. He knows all about Rampancy and what it takes to drive an AI insane, and while she would resist his attack and end up being saved by the Chief in Halo 3, the piece of madness brought forth by the Gravemind would stick with it, and she would actually argue with this split personality in Halo 4. Now, during Cortana's intrusion into the Mantle's approach, she actually splintered off these rampant spikes throughout the ship at the end of Halo 4, and these spikes would remain aboard the ship, and Cortana would only save a little bit of herself to get Chief off the ship at the end. Now, I believe that the little bit she saved to speak with the Chief is the real or sane Cortana. She died when she saved the Chief, but the rampant spikes which remained aboard the Mantle's approach are what make up Cortana now in the Domain and in Halo 5. She believes she was cured of Rampancy, but actually she only lost a piece of her consciousness that argued with her. That piece that fought the Gravemind and told him he was wrong is effectively now dead, and the piece that agrees with the Gravemind is all that remains. So to wrap things up here, I actually believe that Cortana was not saved by the Domain. She only thinks that's what saved her, but in reality she just fixed because she was never experiencing traditional Rampancy. What she experienced was the logic plague, and now she's no longer arguing with that piece of her mind that told her that what she was doing was wrong. Therefore, she doesn't feel like she's going insane anymore, and she's carrying out what she truly believes is the right thing to do. But all she's doing is what the Gravemind wanted her to do: create more misery and pain. Have a think about that one. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope it's given you a bit of insight into Rampancy and how it could possibly affect Halo Infinite's storyline. I hope you click on the subscribe button, you know, like, comment, tell me what you think. But as always, happy gaming.